Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. Tonight, the entire episode is devoted to the Supreme Court's order that names of foreign account holders given to the government by various countries should be handed over to the court. As yet, the names have not been revealed, but given to the SIT in a sealed envelope. The SIT will now decide what to do. Prashant Bhushan, however, has already said he will petition the SIT to make the names public. In addition, it's possible they could leak, particularly if they're shared with agencies like the Enforcement Directorate and the CBI. So tonight we ask, if the names are made public or leaked, how serious could be the consequences for India? In part two, I shall talk to two leading lawyers, Harish Salve, who is sharply critical of the Supreme Court's action, and Prashant Bhushan, who petitioned the Supreme Court in the black money case. But first, an exclusive interview with Attorney General Mukul Rohatgi. Yesterday, he faced the ire of the court and was virtually told the court is not concerned with the confidentiality clauses India has signed up to. How does he respond to what the Supreme Court has done and what the Chief Justice has said? Mr. Rohatgi, this morning the government handed over to the Supreme Court in a sealed envelope the names of 627 people given by HSBC Bank. Why have you not submitted the 612 names which the press has said have been given to the government reportedly by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists?
Karan, the government of India got from the government of France a list of 627 names which emanated from HSBC Geneva, which had been stolen by an employee in Geneva. But we got it from the government of France based on double taxation avoidance treaty, which has a clause of confidentiality and so on. But the answer to your question is that what was required by the court and what is being investigated by the SIT are these 627 names. There is no authenticity whatsoever attached to the list of some 600 names from an organization which you have just mentioned, and therefore what is in contemplation are these names, and these names are undergoing a verification and an inquiry, because some of these accounts may be genuine and some of these may be legal, some may be illegal.
Let me ask you a quick question before I move on. Does the government have names from other sources which you have not shared with the court because you don't believe they are authentic or verified?
No, let me tell you, you must understand the parameters of this kind of an investigation. Just for information, one of the three names which were disclosed day before yesterday was a name which we had got from another government and which did not occur in the list of 627. So it's not only that we are getting 627 names from one government, we constantly get information from different governments. That is also verified. It's an ongoing practice. There are lakhs and hundreds of entries of transactions which are passed on by some governments, which are verified. In many cases, even students opening accounts in England and so on and so forth are informed. Those are routine, they are seen and they are junked.
Let me put this to you.
Therefore, the one particular name we got.
Please finish,
yes.
Go ahead. One particular name you got, please finish.
One particular name we got, as I told you, was from another government under another treaty, which is called, the type of exchange of information in that case is called spontaneous. Which means that you don't need to make a request. Spontaneous means that if those tax authorities are suspicious of one particular account because of huge withdrawals, etc., they tell us.
Mr. Rohatgi, let's not get lost in technical details. I wanted to actually clarify a specific point, and let me put it like this. Newspaper reports claimed that the Chief Justice had asked for all names given by all countries and all sources to be made available. Was that the case, or were newspaper reports inaccurate?
The reports are inaccurate. The Chief Justice asked for names from Germany, which are famously called 26 accounts from Liechtenstein, and the list from HSBC. There are no other lists except these two. The first one has since been made public in the month of May 2014, pursuant to orders of the Supreme Court. The second list is the one which is engaging the attention of the court, the SIT and the Government of India, and that list along with an updated status list or a status report for these 627 were placed before the Supreme Court in a sealed cover today.
Now, the Supreme Court has handed the names to the SIT in that same sealed cover. But what assurance do you have that the SIT won't make the names public? Prashant Bhushan, one of the petitioners in this case, has gone public today to say that he will petition the SIT to make the names public. So I repeat, do you have any assurance that the SIT won't make the names public, or are you worried they may?
No, we have no assurance from anybody, but if he makes that plea, as we have said, these names were with the SIT from 27th of June. So they will get a duplicate list through the Supreme Court. We have nothing to hide, but we will request the SIT not to disclose all names because they will be in breach of the confidentiality clause of almost all double taxation treaties, and the treaties provide that once the investigation is complete and you have separated the grain from the chaff, namely that such and such accounts are tainted and are having ill-gotten money, then those accounts can be declared in a tax court, which means public, and therefore they should be made public. The right of privacy of genuine account holders should not be made public. That is the treaty.
I understand.
And that is the judgment in Ram Jethmalani case itself.
Let me interrupt you. I understand all of that. What I want to ask you now is a very specific question. The names will also, it seems, be shared with agencies like the Enforcement Directorate and the CBI. What is the danger that they could leak? You know, and I know, that the Enforcement Directorate and the CBI is notorious for leaking.
Now, Karan, I cannot say whether it will be leaked by one department or the other, but presently the list is with the SIT. In fact, from June till now, till the end of October, they have not been leaked. The SIT is a very responsible body which has drawn officers from various departments, and I am sure that they will take all steps to maintain secrecy as required by law and declare names as required by the treaty as and when the time comes. But one more very important question, one more very important reason I must tell you. The income tax is bound to complete investigation and all assessments under the Income Tax Act for undisclosed income by 31st of March 2015 for all these accounts, because the limitation will run out.
Absolutely.
Therefore, it is not open-ended and it will end in 4 or 5 months from today, and you will know what the truth is, what has to be disclosed,
Mr. Hotkey, I'm asking you specific questions. Give me specific answers, please, sir. The problem is, you are confident and hopeful, but you have no guarantee that the SIT won't make the names public. Let me, on the other hand, point something else out to you. When yesterday in court you stressed the importance of confidentiality, the Chief Justice actually scoffed at it. He said, and I'm quoting, "Don't give such certificates of confidentiality." He then added that the court would deal with any problem arising out of breach of confidentiality whenever it happened. And I put it to you, that's not a very reassuring indication from the Chief Justice of India. That worries people. It suggests that, in fact, if the SIT were to make the names public, he wouldn't stand in their way.
Your assessment, I respectfully say, is completely erroneous. First thing everybody must understand is that exchanges in open court between the bench and the bar do not constitute any view or a judgment of the court. The judgment of the court is what is written on paper. Every day we have exchanges in all kinds of cases. That does not constitute any law or any verdict or any directive. So if the press chooses to just write all the words which were exchanged in court and put out all sentences as if that is the verdict of the court, it is completely wrong, and completely wrong on the part of the media to say that the court has already taken a decision.
I accept your point that the obiter dicta of judges, which is their spoken comments, can't be taken as their written judgments, and therefore you don't have to take them as seriously as perhaps the press does. I accept that. But the problem is that we at Headlines Today have very good reason to believe that you may already have breached the Swiss double tax avoidance agreement. We have a written communication, Mark sir, a written communication from Anne Cezard of the Department of Finance of the Swiss government in Bern, which explicitly says, and I'm quoting her, the information exchanged under the terms of the DTA can be provided to a court in situations where it is dealing with a specific case related to tax matters for which this information is relevant. Then she adds, conversely, information cannot be disclosed in principle to a court or any other body outside of such proceedings. Now, you've released names that are not connected to any specific case. Secondly, none of those names face cases. So I put it to you, you may already be in breach of the Swiss double tax avoidance agreement.
Whether we are or we are not is a separate question. We are bound by the judgment of the Supreme Court to give all names in a sealed cover to the SIT. The SIT will maintain confidentiality, and we have pleaded before the SIT that we ought not to be in breach of any confidentiality clause, and that is exactly what I was putting before the Supreme Court yesterday, but the ultimate occasion did not arise for the Supreme Court to give any verdict.
You had a
This is where we stand, and we will...
You began your answer
we will explain to the Swiss authorities...
Attorney General, you began your answer... Attorney General...
We are also bound.
Attorney General, you began your answer in a very telling and revealing fashion. You said whether we are or are not in breach of the Swiss DTAA is another matter. You're therefore clearly conceding by implication that you may have already breached the Swiss DTAA, as Anne Cezard's letter clearly suggests you have.
That is not true. I have not seen the letter, and I cannot really deliberate upon it. The letter is addressed to maybe to the income tax authorities. It hasn't come to me. But one thing I must tell you, that after the Supreme Court directed 8 genuine accounts also to be disclosed from Liechtenstein in the month of May 2014, we got a letter from the German authorities as to why they have been disclosed, and we are supposed to give an explanation. We don't want a repeat of that situation, and that is why we went to court yesterday.
You've said something very important. You've already received a letter of objection from the German authorities for disclosure of information and details to the court which they believe you should not have done. Now I'm saying to you that Anne Cezard has communicated to our channel to suggest that the information given to the Supreme Court this morning may be a breach of the Swiss double tax avoidance agreement. Let me put this to you, and I'm asking you this question as Attorney General and as one of India's most learned and respected lawyers. In terms of the double taxation avoidance agreements, how serious a breach is the breach of the confidentiality clause?
I will answer it in 2 parts. First, giving documents in a sealed cover to a court which ultimately did not even open the sealed cover and passed it on to the authorities concerned cannot be deemed to be a breach of the confidentiality agreement, because the court did not even look at it, number one. Number two, if a breach actually occurs and we are unable to give a satisfactory explanation to the reciprocating court, then it is possible that that reciprocating state may either refuse to deal with us and give us further information, but certainly information will dry up, and our concern is that if information dries up, the question of unearthing black money abroad will become absolutely impossible, and in fact it will be counterproductive to Mr. Ram Jethmalani's case. This is what I wanted to explain to Mr. Jethmalani and to his lawyer.
I'm particularly interested in the second half of your answer, that if you are deemed to have breached a double taxation agreement by breaching the confidentiality clause, collaboration and cooperation will stop, information will dry up. On your first point, that because you gave the information in a sealed envelope, it can't be considered breach of confidentiality. I just want to remind you of what Anne Cezard of the Swiss government has said. She says information cannot be disclosed in principle to a court. It has to relate to a specific case. You've given names in principle. They don't relate to a specific case. Therefore, as far as Anne Cezard is concerned, you have breached it.
I'm sorry, your contentions on both counts are wrong. Firstly, there are 627 specific cases. Secondly, giving something in a sealed cover which cannot be seen by anybody cannot be termed as a disclosure. And this, if no response has been given to this letter, as I told you, I'm not aware, then I will draft this response the way I am telling you and the viewers, and we will contest the fact that there is a breach of the Swiss Treaty.
Let's move on. If you are deemed to have breached, the confidentiality clause in the Swiss case or the German case or the French case, what impact will it have on the additional double taxation agreements that you are presently negotiating? I believe you're negotiating some 7 or 8 agreements with 7 or 8 countries. You are also involved in negotiating information exchange agreements. What impact will it have on the new negotiation that's underway?
Obviously, it will have a deleterious impact if India is seen in the international fora to be a country which breaches its solemn obligations under a treaty. It's obvious that it will have an adverse impact.
Now, it's not just that it will have an adverse impact on negotiations that are underway, and therefore these new countries may not negotiate treaties with you. I believe there is potentially an even bigger impact that could follow. If the government cannot guarantee confidentiality, then I'm told you will not be in a position to comply with the United States Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, which you are required to comply with by the 31st of December.
Yes.
Let me finish my question. Let me finish the question. Let me finish the question, then answer it.
Sure.
And I'm told that if you cannot comply with the FATCA by the 31st of December, then starting 1st January, Indian financial institutions in America could become subject to sanctions. And more importantly and more worryingly, all remittances from America to India could become subject to 30% withholding tax. Can you confirm those?
You are absolutely right. If we are unable to have an in-cover treaty with them, the effect will be a withholding tax levy of 30%. And that is why we are worried that we should not be seen as an authority or a country which breaches it. And we will, as per the court's order today, in fact, I explained exactly what you said just now to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court was of the view that we should explain our difficulties and whatever grievances we have in this process to the SIT, which is headed by 2 retired judges of the court. We will do so immediately to them and request them to make it a point to put it in their report, which has to go to court by November 30, that is the end of next month, so that even they understand what the position is, and maybe the Supreme Court may require to have a relook. A relook by the Supreme Court has not been prohibited by the order made today.
That's very interesting. You're hoping that when the SIT submits its report, the Supreme Court at that moment will have a relook at this issue. But however, let me, for the sake of the audience, spell out the consequences of what would happen if you fail to comply with the FATCA by the 31st of December. When it says that all remittances to India from America will become subject to withholding tax, it's not just remittances sent by an individual to his family that will become subject to 30% tax. It means all investment in India by American companies will become subject to 30% withholding tax. Is that right?
Yes, that is right.
And that means, sir, doesn't it, that if American companies want to invest in India, say $100, they actually have to put forward $130 because 30 will get removed by the withholding tax. So the cost of investing in India, the cost of investing by American companies in India will have gone up by an enormous 30% at one go. Am I right?
Are you asking me?
Yes, I am indeed. So I'm asking you for confirmation.
Yes, you are right. This adverse impact will happen. That is why we were worried. That is why we went to the court. The court said we will not examine all these issues because you have a right to go to the SIT. The SIT is the agent or the delegate of the Supreme Court, and we will therefore immediately place our position on this FATCA, as it is called, before the SIT and ask them to make a reference to the Supreme Court. And I must tell you, the Supreme Court recorded my statement today that we do not press this application as of now because we have liberty to go to the SIT.
All right, and you will raise this matter with the SIT and hope and pray that when the SIT...
Certainly.
And you will also hope and pray that when the SIT reports back to the Supreme Court, as you said a moment ago, would re-look at this matter.
I am confident that it will happen.
Now, moving beyond the impact on international treaties, moving beyond the horrifying impact that could happen on trade and investment with America, if the names of people who have legal accounts, money that they have legitimately earned, where there is no wrongdoing involved, if those names are revealed in public, will it not infringe on their right of privacy under Article 21?
You are absolutely right. In fact, in the judgment of Mr. Jethmalani, the main judgment of 2012, in this case, in para 76, records that right of privacy is a fundamental right, and people who have genuine accounts, who have done no wrongdoing, they have a right not to have their names disclosed in newspapers and flashed across TV screens. And it is for that reason that we are verifying all 627 accounts to shift to separate the grain from the chaff, and the wrongdoings ought to be disclosed and not which are right doings.
Can I put this to you? In disregarding your arguments about double taxation avoidance treaties, in disregarding your argument about the impact on trade and investment from America, in disregarding your argument about Article 21 and breaching the right of privacy, has the Supreme Court been a little reckless, a little unwise?
See, again we go back to the basic question. The Supreme Court has not rejected a single argument. As I told you earlier, exchange of thoughts or exchange of arguments is not reflective of the court's judgment. Yesterday's judgment of the court is one line, namely adjourned to today at 10:30.
All right.
And today the court has recorded an order of SIT. It's completely wrong to say that any argument has been rejected.
I take your point that do not go by the obiter dicta of the Supreme Court judges and the Chief Justice in particular yesterday. Those don't constitute judgment.
Sorry, Karan. Sorry, in law, obiter dicta has a separate meaning. This is not even obiter. These are loud thoughts which can come to an individual, but ultimately what is penned down is the law.
Would you rather that the Supreme Court and the Chief Justice in particular had not indulged in these loud thoughts? A certain modicum of restraint and silence would have been more becoming of the Chief Justice of India rather than thinking aloud in this fashion.
I don't think it is fair to blame the Chief Justice of India or any judge for that matter on the bench or otherwise. These exchanges occur every day, normally in every case. It is just that reporters are present in this case in huge numbers and they seek to report every line as if it has been decided, okay, or as if the court has damned a party.
Two quick questions before I end the interview. I want to come to one of the comments made by the Chief Justice, and I'm quoting him. Why are you trying to create a protective umbrella for these people? He seemed to suggest that by revealing the names, you would remove that umbrella. Now, Arun Jaitley, the finance minister, has said that actually if the names are revealed, where there is no prosecution evidence and no charge filed, foreign countries will stop cooperating. You said the same thing a moment ago. And that, he said, Mr. Jaitley said, would actually provide cover for the alleged offenders. So Mr. Jaitley's position and the so-called comments of the Chief Justice are the polar opposite of each other. Who, in your opinion, is correct? The Chief Justice in his loud thinking or Mr. Jaitley in what he said in considered interviews?
I would say both have a right to express their views. I concur with the views of Mr. Jaitley, but I do not say that the Chief Justice has no right to have loud thinking. Every day when we appear in court, the judge may start by saying that I'm going to hold against you on this point, but after some time a court or a judge, by a process of reasoning and logic, may come around to our view. It happens every day. So let's not blame courts just because they have some loud thinking.
What you're saying is don't take seriously the loud thinking of judges in courts. They don't necessarily stand.
Exactly.
They don't necessarily
Either of judges or even of lawyers.
You know, it's a very sad conclusion we're coming to. What you're saying is don't take seriously the loud thinking of judges. They don't necessarily mean what they say. For laymen, that would be quite a shocking conclusion.
I don't think so, because judgments are delivered after due deliberation of the law, after due deliberation of the facts. This exchange of thoughts happened for 15 or 20 minutes without opening a single paper. So it was just an exchange. The court said, why have you, etc., etc. So I'm not getting into technical details, but do not, for God's sake, go only by loud thinking, which seems to be the order of the day in all media reportings.
All right, Mr. Rohatgi, as Attorney General of India, I'm grateful to you for clarifying the situation. I'm even more grateful to you for pointing out officially the damning consequences that would follow if it is really deemed and established that India has breached the clauses of confidentiality, what that would mean for existing double taxation avoidance treaties, what it would mean for those we hope to negotiate, and most important of all, what it would mean for trade and investment with America. Thank you very much for talking to Headlines today. Time for a break, but then the views of two senior Supreme Court lawyers, Harish Salve, who is sharply critical of the Supreme Court, and Prashant Bhushan, who is hugely encouraged by the Supreme Court's behavior. Welcome back. You're watching To The Point. Lawyers in India are sharply divided by their response to the Supreme Court's order in the black money case. Some see the Supreme Court as the only institution that is capable of effective and meaningful action. Others believe the court has overreached itself and acted adventurously. We present both views tonight. In a moment, I shall speak to Prashant Bhushan, who supports the court's action. But first, Harish Salve, who's very critical. Mr. Salve, you've told me that you're sharply critical of the Supreme Court's order demanding that all the HSBC names be made available to the court immediately. You believe the court has made a serious mistake. Can I begin by asking you, why do you believe this was wrong?
Karan, the point is, what is the end game you have in mind? If you have a political agenda of showing a particular class of people in India in a bad light, and therefore saying that you must go back to a more socialist regime and stuff like that, then this is a very good idea, because name and shame will work. Doesn't matter if you get your money. But that's not what the court wants. What the court wants is, there has been so much hoopla about so much money kept outside. We seem to have believed that some parts of the reports are true. So the court is anxious that if there has been massive tax evasion, the money should be brought to India. But I'm afraid the end result of the process being followed will be precisely the converse. Foreign countries take their treaties very seriously. Countries like Switzerland and France have institutions which at one time had complete opacity. The OECD has been working on this for a decade, and we are about to sign an agreement in Berlin. All these agreements are very clear on confidentiality. I know in America and in England, including in England, I know of some people who have consulted me of how these very similar kind of information has been used to contact people, show them that we have this kind of information. Do you want us to run the mile, do a full investigation, in which case if we catch you, we hang you? Or are you willing to come clean and settle? And large amounts of money have been collected. So if that is what you want, then secrecy has to be maintained. Otherwise, tomorrow if the countries turn around, as they most probably will, and say, sorry, you're in breach of treaty, we are not cooperating with you, the banks are not going to cooperate with you, what's going to be the end result? It's going to be exactly the opposite of what the court wants to achieve.
I want to tell you that Headlines Today, this channel...
You just have humiliated a bunch of people, that's all.
Now, I want to point out to you that Headlines Today, this channel, has received an official communication from Anne Cezard, of the Department of Finance of the Swiss government in Bern, which explicitly says, and I'm quoting, the information exchanged under the terms of the DTAA can be provided to a court in situations where it is dealing with a specific case related to tax matters for which this information is relevant. Then she adds, conversely, information cannot be disclosed in principle to a court or any other body outside of such proceedings. Now, the names released this morning to the Supreme Court are not related to any specific case. Secondly, there are no cases or charges against those 627 names. So are you of the opinion that the Indian government has already breached the DTAA with Switzerland?
Well, technically, if the sealed cover is returned to the government of India tomorrow morning, they may be able to retrieve the situation. But if the sealed cover is handed over to the SIT, a view is possible, and mind you, there will be people who are account holders who behind the scene will get lawyers to go and tell the Swiss government that there is a complete violation of the treaty. Didn't this happen when the Bofors was going on? You had people who brought proceedings in Switzerland and we had a hell of a problem trying to get details out of them.
Can I interrupt?
So people will go running to Switzerland and tell them there is a violation of treaty. And the ground is very clear. No country in the world, and Karan, I have been working with a lot of people outside India, no country in the world understands this concept of SIT and monitoring. This is a strange animal in India.
Can I interrupt and put this to you?
Nobody else does it. Very difficult.
I take your point that this is a strange animal.
What the Supreme Court is doing.
Can I put something to you? I want to pick up on something you said. At the moment, the names are in a sealed envelope. They haven't been opened by the Supreme Court. They've been passed to the SIT. Are you worried that the moment the SIT opens the envelope, we will become in breach of the Swiss treaty as interpreted by Anne César of the Swiss Ministry of Finance? Is that your worry?
Yes. Yes, because tomorrow they will ask, is the SIT the police? It's not. Is the SIT an investigation agency of the government of India? It isn't. What is it? It is a special investigation team of 2 judges created. They will say, we don't understand that. Please explain it to us. We understand executive government. Police and investigation is a part of the executive government. That they will understand. CBI they will understand, although CBI and ED have their own problems. They are only for purposes of investigation under strict confidentiality.
All right.
To those agencies to investigate. They will say under Indian law, where is the power of investigation to be found in an SIT? If you tell them it is in a court order, they will say, how can a court order this? And mind you, there will be people who will be from behind the scenes telling the Swiss that please stop cooperating with India. I'll tell you more than anything else, the banks will tell the Swiss government that please stop cooperating with this.
Let me go one step further.
In our system, I've got used to SIT and investigation by SITs and all. Maybe it's a good thing in India, maybe it's not a good thing in India, we can debate it separately. But where international treaties kick in, this is a very serious problem.
Okay.
And I think this enthusiasm of name and shame is a complete antithesis to the way international treaties and international investigation in these areas work.
Mr. Salve, I want to go one step further. The names, as you know, have been given to the SIT. Unless something miraculous happens, the SIT will open that envelope and the names will then be made available fully to the SIT. The question I want to ask you is this. Can you hear me, Mr. Salve? Mr. Salve, can you hear me? Mr. Salve, can you hear me? Mr. Salve? Mr. Salve, can you hear me? No, we seem to have tragically lost Mr. Salve at that point. We're going to take a quick commercial break.
The last date for assessment of all these accounts is 31st of March 2015, and all assessments have to be completed by that period.
Government finally submitting the blacklist. And like always, you got it first on Headlines Today.
Supreme Court stepping in to perhaps act as
a report by the end of
They
November.
have given whatever the
file
correspondence
which has been submitted names that were revealed for absolute damn squib.
The most exhaustive coverage on Headlines Today, because you matter.
Welcome back. Harish Salve still with me, and also joining me to give an opposite view is Supreme Court lawyer Prashant Bhushan. Mr. Salve, let me finish that question that I was asking before the line to you broke. The Supreme Court has handed the names in a sealed envelope to the SIT. The SIT will shortly open those. Now, Prashant Bhushan has gone on record on television today that he will be petitioning the SIT to disclose those names. Secondly, the names will also be shared with the CBI and the Enforcement Directorate. What would happen if either Prashant Bhushan succeeds and the SIT makes the names public, or if they get leaked when they are shared with the CBI and ED? What would happen in either case? Give me a short, quick answer.
Well, the short answer is, in my perception, all these information, whether they are coming from Switzerland, whether it is coming from France, and even inter-country investigations, like if France is giving you German data or Germany is giving you Swiss data, your source is your double tax treaty. If confidentiality is breached, they will refuse to cooperate. They've made that position clear. You just mentioned Switzerland has already made that position clear. So if it is given to a private petitioner, clearly it's gone.
One other quick question.
If it is made available to CBI and ED, they'll have to be very careful, but you know, our organizations, the amount of leakages there are, the best way to blow all this will be to leak this information.
Tell me something. If there are just 2 or 3 names that are leaked and not the whole list, would that be sufficient to damage the flow of information from these countries, which is critical if you're going to have successful prosecutions?
It could be.
It could be.
It could be. Because they are very particular. Yeah, because they'll say that means the list is public. 3 have come today, 3 more may come tomorrow.
In other words, confidentiality, which is critical to getting more information, can be breached with just 1 or 2 leaks. I'm just asking you for quick confirmation of that.
Correct, because you see the people who are giving this information to the country, those countries, they have back-to-back arrangements saying we will not make it public unless certain norms are complied with. So those countries are also concerned their sources of information will dry up.
So in other words,
it's not that they are being protective of somebody. You know, this us and them has to stop. That either you expose everybody or you're a crook. You know?
I understand.
If we have this kind of a narrow point of view, you will shame and embarrass people, but that's about as much as you will.
One quick question before I let you go. What you're saying to me is that we're at a very critical juncture. Something as simple as the leak of just 2 names could scupper the confidentiality and therefore could stop the flow of information that we need to prosecute alleged wrongdoers. In other words, it's a very, very critical situation that the Indian government is poised at just now.
Absolutely.
Mr. Salve, thank you very much for that.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for that confirmation. I'm joined now by Prashant Bhushan, another leading Supreme Court lawyer, one of the petitioners in this case, in fact, who in fact takes a very different view. Prashant Bhushan, shortly after the names were handed over in a sealed envelope to the Supreme Court this morning, you were on television saying that you will petition the SIT to make the names public. Can I ask you to confirm, are you still intending to petition the SIT to make all the names public? Prashant Bhushan?
Yes, we will. The reason is, yes. Can you not hear me?
I can. Please go ahead and answer.
Right. The reason is that, number 1, these names have not come under the double taxation treaty from either the German government or the French government. These names are essentially names which have been leaked out by whistleblowers, just like the ICJ list. There is an ICJ organization called...
Can I interrupt you? Oh, we've lost the line to Prashant Bhushan. We seem to have a lot of problem today with OBs and with line connections to our guests. I'm afraid we're not going to be able to go very... Oh, he's back. Prashant Bhushan, you're back. You're arguing that, in fact, these names weren't delivered to India under the double taxation treaties. They were delivered by whistleblowers. Can I correct you there? There's no doubt that, in fact, it was the whistle... Can I correct you? Can I correct you? You see...
No, just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Yeah, go ahead.
You see, the names were given to the French government by someone who allegedly stole them from HSBC Bank. The French government then officially gave them to India under the DTAA. So you're right in saying a whistleblower gave it to the French, but the French were the ones who gave it to India, and they gave it under the DTAA. Secondly, the Germans may have bribed to get the LGT bank names, but they too officially gave it to India under the DTAA. So as far as India is concerned, both names from the French and the Germans came under the DTAA.
You see, this very argument, which was advanced by the UPA government before the Supreme Court, was examined in great detail, at great length by the Supreme Court, and rejected. They said that there is no confidentiality attached to the disclosure of these names under the double taxation agreement with Germany. They have given good reasons for rejecting this argument trotted out by the UPA government. Besides, there is another list which has been put out on a public website by an organization called the ICJ. It has been put out on a public website. Those names, which are about 600 names, 157 to be precise, are being processed also by the Income Tax Department. Those names are for anybody to see. Anybody can go to the ICJ website and download those names.
Can I interrupt? I asked
Rohatgi,
I asked Mr. Mukul Rohatgi, the Attorney General, in part 1, whether the names given by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, the 612 names they're talking about, have been given to the Supreme Court. He said, no, they haven't. He said, in fact, that they haven't been given. They weren't A, asked for, and B, he also suggested that they weren't verified. So those names are not there at the moment.
But I am just telling you that if names are leaked out by a whistleblower, whether it's a whistleblower who leaks them out to another foreign government or a whistleblower who leaks them out publicly, etc., those names are not bound by any secrecy clause of any double taxation agreement. Secondly, you see, the reason why it is essential for the people of this country to know who these people are is because for 3.5 years the government has been sitting on these names. Successive governments have been sitting on these names, and we have now just been given the names of 3 people, when in fact investigations against several of these people were concluded long ago, which we had disclosed in a press conference more than 2 years ago, where the signed sworn statements of at least 3 people were given out in that press conference who had admitted to having these accounts and admitted to the illegality of these accounts. Even those names have not been disclosed. The question is, the Indian government so far has not got a single name by virtue of using the double taxation agreement and asking a foreign government to disclose holders of accounts in those governments. All these names have come out through leaks by whistleblowers, etc. And even this, the government has been sitting on for more than 3 years without investigating them, without taking any action against them, and not allowing the people of the country to know who these people are.
Mr. Bhushan, I hear what you're saying. These are points you made before. They're very eloquent points, but I want to put to you something that this channel, Headlines Today, has established this evening itself. We have an official communication from Anne Cezard of the Department of Finance of the Swiss government in Bern. And her written letter to us explicitly says, and I'm quoting, "The information exchanged under the terms of the DTA can be provided to a court in situations where it is dealing with a specific case related to tax matters for which this information is relevant." And then very pointedly she adds, conversely, information cannot be disclosed in principle to a court or any other body outside of such proceedings. Now I put it to you that the names that were given today are not connected to any specific case. Secondly, there are no cases or charges against these names. So hasn't the government already breached the Swiss DTAA? Your concern that no DTAs will be breached is disproven by this letter from Anne Cezard.
Firstly, Anne Cezard or the Swiss government has not given us these names. Where is the question of the Swiss government applying any embargo on the disclosure of names which have not even come from the Swiss government? Secondly, no government anywhere in the world is going to say that the Supreme Court is not an authorized court or that these are not authorized proceedings recognized by the DTA. For Mr. Harish Salve to say that the SIT is not a recognized investigating body and it will not be recognized by the foreign countries under DTA, etc., is to my mind utter nonsense.
Okay.
Utter nonsense.
The
SIT is a well-recognized tool. Even a magistrate investigating a matter or inquiring into a matter can ask anybody to investigate.
Let's not quarrel about the SIT. Let's come back to the Swiss government. I want to pick up on your critical point that the names have not come from the Swiss government. You're absolutely right. They haven't. They were given by the French government. They were stolen by someone and given to the French government to begin with. But, and this is the critical point, as the Indian Express has revealed, of the 628 names given by the French government, we got letters of compliance from roughly 170 people. We then asked the Swiss government to ask their banks for confirmation on the basis of those letters of compliance. Information was received back in the case of 75. Now that information has to be only presented to a court in connection with specific cases. What the government has done is to make it available in principle. And I'm saying to you that by doing so, have they not breached the collaboration and the necessity of confidentiality?
Information which has come from the Swiss government in response to specific queries from the Indian government, that can be given to any law enforcement authority in India. And the Supreme Court, being the apex court of this country, is certainly is the apex law enforcement authority in the country. And if the Supreme Court has constituted an SIT, which is clearly an investigative body recognized by our law, as I said, even under the Code of Criminal Procedure, even a magistrate can ask a non-police officer to investigate an offense as well. That's a power given to a magistrate under the Code of Criminal Procedure of this country. What to say of the Supreme Court? The Supreme Court has plenary powers under our constitution to constitute a special investigating team to investigate such matters. They have constituted such a team. This information has been given to them. Where is the question of breach of any confidentiality clause, etc.? The reason why I am saying that these names ought to be made public is that for more than 3 years, the government, successive governments have been sitting on these names. They have not bothered to either investigate the matters. They have closed some of the matters by accepting some kind of a penalty or some kind of tax from these people against many of these people, and yet the names of these people have not been disclosed to the people despite the order of the Supreme Court that at least the names of those people against whom prima facie case of illegality has been established should be disclosed to the people of this country.
My last question. Both Harish Salve, just before you in this part of the show, and earlier the Attorney General were very worried that if a case is made against India for breaching confidentiality, then collaborating governments under the DTAAs will stop collaborating, and that will end up providing cover to alleged wrongdoers. And they are very scared that if a wrong step is taken, we could end up in that predicament. You're saying to me you don't fear that at all?
See, if the information was coming from a foreign government, specifically under the double taxation avoidance agreement, then yes, the disclosure generally without first establishing that there is some illegality attached to these accounts may result in those governments withholding information under the double taxation agreement, but that is not the case here. These names have been disclosed by whistleblowers to different governments through whom they have come to this country. They are not, the Supreme Court went into this and said that these are not covered by the double taxation agreement, and the German government had not asked us not to disclose these names.
Except the German government protested when the LGT names were made public. The Germans have protested. You're ignoring that. The Germans have protested when the LGT names were made public.
No. They did not protest.
The Attorney General confirmed it. The Attorney General confirmed it 20 minutes ago.
I have seen that letter. There is only a query.
All right, that's your interpretation. The Attorney General has said something else, but I'm afraid...
seen that letter.
Okay, I accept your word. I'm simply telling you the Attorney General said something else to us. I'm afraid I've run out of time, and I can also see that, in fact, that image is breaking up critically at this particular moment. My thanks to Prashant Bhushan for joining me. There we end this special episode.